Hello, fellow humans. My name is Dorothy Laxton, and this is Fostering Untethered Communication and Knowledge, an adventure in stimulating objective, critical thought, shining the spotlight through individual spectacles, putting it once again on the bigger picture and our parts in it. Searching for life beyond the lifestyles we North American urban dwellers have to choose to chase, encouraging all to participate in positive change. Hello, fellow humans. It is Friday, February 18th? Does it really matter? This morning I am processing so very, very much. And I would have done a video recording, but my binging through the beginning of the year this year, I have no space. I have technological issues. By nature, I am a Luddite, yet everything I seem to do seems to rely more and more on my technology. I have lost the ability to write, and that breaks my heart. It's something I have to get back to, but that's why I keep grabbing this thing. And so I'm learning how to do things like pause before I light a cigarette so I can cut the sound of that out. Life is a process. I find myself very stuck. My generation really has to grow up and accept the fact that we had a devil-may-care attitude towards everything. We did not think at all about the long-term effects of us living in the moment and just having fun and pursuing lifestyle over building life. Generation X is the last generation that had parents who were building lives and not chasing lifestyles. And so when everybody started screaming about millennials, I just said, what the fuck? Pardon the expletive. It's a really, really, really good stress release, that word. I will not tangent. What the hell did you expect? Everything was about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, getting off, being like, we overtly sexualized everything. And it really, late 60s, there was still some modesty in the world, even in the 70s. And the 70s was a very conflicted time. And maybe someday I will feel comfortable talking more about my dad, particularly, and the struggles he had through the 70s, something that we discussed later in life. The conflicts between cultural norms shifting and things. The general mind that our culture has been my entire life. My entire freaking life. I remember being a small child watching Rod Stewart strutting around on a stage singing If You Want My Body and You Think I'm Sexy, and it made me so uncomfortable. Mind you, at that point, I had already experienced sexual trauma. However, the fact that it was everywhere, it was just everywhere. Little alpha children get ideas in their heads, and then they find vulnerable children and find ways to explore these fascinating ideas with them. And when you're really, really little and you're just starting to, I'll tell you, kids are capable of doing things that grown-ups do. They're capable of the manipulation that grown-ups can do. They're capable of these things. But they don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand the long-term repercussions of what they're doing. My primary perpetrator for all intents and purposes, was a peer. And this is a person who I know because I confronted them in our youth about what had transpired. They had no idea how much they were hurting me. The second they made that connection, and it was later in their adolescence, they were devastated. They like when they finally realized just the coercive, it went from, coercion to bribery to threats to, anyway, again, I stay away from getting too detailed about stuff because it's my primary perpetrator. I see as much of a victim of a culture that went completely frickin' awry and overwhelmed parents that had no idea and no capability and no support. That was the worst thing. Okay, I came from a big family, and instead of finding ways to support us, we were ridiculed, we were shunned, we were bullied, we were picked on, we were prime targets. I know I was a prime freaking target. So, and taking ownership of all of that and finding ways to embrace the fact that, hey, I was really good at what I could do. I was trained from a very young age. I got some glowing accolades. But I'll tell you, sitting here, chain smoking in my apartment, doesn't bring me much solace. It actually kind of disgusts me that I'm looking back on my life and on balance. I just kind of tried to go with the flow, and fact is I shouldn't have. And I guess all of this really is a response to the chatter about Chelsea Handler. Wow. And yeah, I think it was a year ago I first saw it. I don't know. Time is going by so fast. It could have been a couple. There's a show out there called Children Ruin Everything. What kind of messaging are we giving children? Here we have children walking down the street, walking by the sign that says, "Children ruin everything." Do you wonder why the focus has become nothing but overt sexuality? Because we've been force-fed a steady diet of nothing but increased sexual content publicly. And I'm not talking about TV shows. I'm talking about advertising mostly, really. I sat in on a philosophy lecture about the ethics of all of this in 1991. And instead of academia going, whoa, guys, yeah, we got to put on the brakes, we just had a frickin' free-for-all. And now we've got 2 generations of children who have been raised with the focus on recreational sex as opposed to the actual function of sex. And we wonder why. I was scrolling through my recommended list on YouTube this morning, and one of the thumbnails is like, why is the current generation giving up on sex, basically? Well, because they're oversexed. They should not be sexualized as children. This is what happens to victims of childhood sexual abuse and molestation. And that includes psychological abuse. This is psychological abuse. We wonder why all of these young women don't want to have any gender, because it's just too flippin' much, people. And my government's remedy for it is, okay, let's just completely screw with their physiology and their psychology and everything else. And how dare you say we don't say anybody shouldn't do this? And then we'll, when they're, 12 to 16 years old and they have irreparable physical damage because they were led into choices they could not make. Oh, well, guess what? We've got this MAID program, and, we're really sorry that we made life completely hopeless and unlivable for you. We were trying to do the right thing. Sorry. Can we help you get out of this? Here's some barbiturates. Thank you, Canada. We're disgusting. Welcome to Bulgaria, people. That wasn't where I was going to go, but it's where I went. It's some Friday food for thought. No, none of this is stuff that any of us want to hear. I certainly don't want it ringing in my head every morning when I wake up. But if we don't address it like grown-ups who realize that our entire culture is hitting a huge addictive bottom right now, and we don't look in the mirror and say, okay, you know what? We have to give up our gluttony. I'm sorry, right? But the profit motive is the problem. It is the problem. Particularly a profit motive in an unethical world. It doesn't work anymore. Your altruistic ideas about it are no less damaging than the far left's. This notion that we have the right to decide that we were born wrong, and anybody who tells us that we're wrong about that we should look in the mirror and, be grateful for the beautiful gifts that we are, in my country can be put in jail. So I'm a little concerned with that, because I'm a firm believer that we are all unique manifestations of creation, and 90% of the problem of what's going on right now is all of these social constructs being imposed earlier in our lives, rather than us saying, hey, we're human beings. Look, this is your physiology. This is their physiology. And all that means is we both play different parts, and there is a duality there, like reality. Gen X and baby boomers, okay? I am living proof that what we did is damaging. People see Chelsea Handler. And yeah, I completely agree with the right-wing pundits. She's internally miserable. That's why she self-medicates so much. I'm a very, 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 very well-schooled addict who is very frustrated with themselves, let alone anybody else being frustrated with me. And she's still in denial. That's why she protests so much, right? That's why she's got to make sure everybody knows how happy she is. Well, had I actually pursued writing in the arts and allowed my work to go to publishers, and at the time when I was in my early 20s, that kind of felt like selling my soul. Back in the day when they were telling Nirvana that they had to change the title of Rape Me so that they could sell their album in Walmart. And in retrospect, yeah, I've been aware that we've been desensitizing ourselves and normalizing all of this stuff my whole life. And I try to talk to people about it, and nobody wants to hear it. Either it's, I got to loosen up. I'm a party pooper. I'm the one who sits there and says, hey, wait a second, maybe you should think about, scaling the bluffs right now. You're a little drunk. Even when I was drunk. I'll admit, one of the early reasons why I didn't pursue getting my driver's license was I never wanted to be designated driver. And even in the fact that that's kind of funny, and it is a dodging of responsibility. It's also an understanding that I really honestly didn't want to take the risk of getting behind the wheel drunk. And I would object to drunk people driving. I, on more than one occasion, took keys away from people. And I will tell you another reason is I have anger issues and I could be a very dangerous driver. I am the type of person that can dissociate and flip into a violent state. I can't do anything about the fact that that happens in me. I can't. Medication, there's any number, you can only fight it. You can only be aware of it and try to stop it and hope that people around you can have compassion enough to understand that you are waging a war inside yourself right now. When I start getting yelly, I apologize more than anything. I actually did it when I gave birth to my child. I was a suck. Both of my more mild-mannered sisters were like truck drivers, apparently. I was weepy, I can't do this, blah, 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 blah. So, it's funny how that goes. We really do. The only way to correct the trajectory. I am not surprised at all that we have a massive, massive, massive movement of young women just not identifying with gender at all. And it's really unfortunate the way Western culture pendulum swings. Culture, civilization. Civilization, wow. That's what triggered all of this. I wanted to look up a video this morning, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to post it on Twitter and elsewhere. And perhaps when I put this Friday Food for Thought together, I'll put a screenshot in of it or something. But it was a historical program that I was watching on literally the creation of chivalry being basically the demands of women for men to treat them better. And I hear about people like AOC, which I still think it's ridiculous that we call a person an acronym like that. Like, I thought it was, before I knew what AOC was, it's like, what is AOC? Oh, what is AOC? What does AOC think she is? I'm surprised she doesn't use they. People like AOC, being offended by men opening the door for them. Like when I first started having these conversations about gender wars in the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, as I donned adulthood, I came to the conclusion that men are just generally, on a basic societal level, screwed. And they have been ever since industrialization. Before industrialization and the Enlightenment, which blinded us by a sense of entitlement. That's what happened in the 80s. Actually, through the whole civil rights movements, all of it, okay? We had good altruistic movements that got infected with marketing and became industries. All of them. And made us all commodities. Oh, I'm very tempted to see some very, very dangerous things right now. The proof that North America is not systemically racist is everywhere. The proof that our culture on this side of the pond, and even across the pond, okay, Western culture has moved. This Western civilization is the only civilization that's moved away from, or tried to move away from, racism. The problem is, and slavery, the only ones. How is that inherently racist? All these theories make no sense. Okay? right now, today, the way that overt sexuality is normalized and children are being literally, I'm sorry, indoctrinated to a specific way of viewing the world as opposed to allowing them to emerge into a world and discovering what it is with guidance when appropriate. It's the exact same thing. And it's so dogmatic. And if these people could actually just step outside of themselves and see the caricatures they actually are, well, it's a hard thing to do. Looking in the mirror and seeing the warts and saying, these are parts of me that I have to deal with. I can't just medicate them away. I can't just get them cut off. I could, but that's never going to fix it. And that's going to rob me of the human experience of being a fallible creature that grows. Everything that is happening right now was so predictable. It was predicted. People talk about fake news. Watch the movie Network. Read Orwell. Read a lot of books that I haven't read. Because really, it's just, I didn't need to. I remember being in my early teens, really wanting people to understand what we knew, that place where there's this connectedness. And the fact that I was anti-globalist. I remember, I was in high school from 86 to 91. I went back and took a couple extra credits. I knew we were heading for hell as I studied. And I started self-medicating very young. Started drinking very young. Yeah, our whole culture, our whole non-civilization is hitting a bottom, and it needs to, because that's the only way an addict recovers. They got to hit bottom, and they've got to decide to pick themselves up and look in the mirror and wipe all the shit off their face and start living a healthy life and start reshaping our trajectories. People talk about stakeholder capitalism as opposed to shareholder capitalism, and what happened with capitalism from the 80s on. Okay, when when all of the money markets were deregulated and all of this poppycock financial instruments, it's all bullshit. I do 100% believe that there should be salary caps. I think that businesses should not be profit driven, they should be value driven, and that will give them profits. Now, what our culture popularly and politically is calling altruism and shareholder capitalism is not. I'm appalled at what's going on in the States with this train derailment in Ohio and a transportation minister that is like barely, or they don't call them ministers, do they? I don't know. Does it matter? No, absolutely nothing about that guy matters when it comes to what he's actually supposed to be doing. Again, I'm tempted to say very dangerous things. What we're seeing as systemic has become systemic because it's literally being like promoted. It's where our focus is. Racial issues are issues because we keep them in the fore. Certain communities don't thrive because their culture doesn't take them to the places that will make them thrive. There is so much evidence throughout history of people being able to achieve things achieve greatness, achieve power, which I don't believe should ever actually be anybody's end game. Women, interactions between visible races. Through all of this melting we've been trying to doing, we're actually erasing a lot of culture. I've been lamenting the erasure of culture because of the global implementation of American corporate capitalism. Sorry, USA, but manifest destiny. What the? And a lot of the unrest that has literally wiped out cultures. Rural cultures being destroyed in the name of progress. I get offended really at the fact that white people all get clumped together. Okay, white people are the majority of people on the planet for whatever reason. But the cultures, the diversity of culture throughout, and Whoopi Goldberg's messed upness about racism there is proof positive of this. Not all white-skinned people are the same by any stretch of the imagination. And just because even to this day, look at Klaus Schwab, the elite are generally white males, doesn't mean all white people benefit from their privilege. So it's not the system, it's the cultures that we're adopting. The pursuit of self over the pursuit of community. I would love to find a way to build some community for myself, but it's very, very hard when our whole world is just so bubble oriented. I'm winding down. There's a lot to chew on. We're going to see if I can get this out today. I have a few things to do first. Don't know if I really got... I did. I do know that I got to what really triggered all of this, and I think it is that people like Chelsea Handler are well medicated, and you can convince yourself that that's happiness, that that's contentment, that that's loving yourself. All that feel good, all of those instant gratifications give, at the end of the day, no satisfaction. People like Chelsea Handler make careers out of it, but for the average woman, that lifestyle of just chasing the self-gratification and the emptiness of everything else, for the average woman that, doesn't make a living off of joking about it, it's actually pretty painful. And I guess people like Chelsea Handler, for some of us those of us who try to maintain the denial, and there's a relatability to it. That's why it sells. All these women know that they're not happy either, but they gotta pretend. And yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it, that we've got to keep, telling everybody how great life is, waking up in the morning and getting high and masturbating. I've lived that. And it's not happiness. And one of these days, I got a couple of years on the girl, from what I understand. One of these days, it's going to hit her like a ton of frickin' bricks. And everybody's going to go, oh, isn't that so sad? And they're going to go about their daily lives and allow popular culture to continue to create sad, sad souls. That I'm going to wish everyone well. Oh, it seems I have one more in me. It is still Friday, February 17th, 2023. I was a day ahead of myself in my earlier recordings. My experimentation with using the pause button, etc., didn't go as well as I thought because I cut out some stuff. It's kind of funny what actually got edited, but back to bigotry will always be. It will always be. We will all always have personal biases. And cultural bigotries are going to happen because cultures are different, and there are different drivers, and there are different traditions, and there are different things. Currently, the bigotry that is overwhelming in our society is, and this is the thing about bigotry, is people don't realize that they're bigots. They 100% don't realize, because what bigotry is a cultural phenomenon where everybody believes that something that actually is wrong is right. Take the bigotry against pedestrians in my city. People get mad at me for stopping in front of a car that refuses to put its foot on the brake while my body's in front of it to request that they put their foot on the brake. They get mad at me and they drive around me because how dare I ask them to respect the fact that when they're literally got to be depressing the gas pedal for their car to be rolling towards me, or at the very least, they've released their foot from the brake, all it takes is a sneeze, and I'm a dead person. And people don't think about this because their 2 seconds is more important. That is textbook bigotry. The way people talk about children is bigotry. It's bigotry. So when we go back in time and we start talking about people like Abraham Lincoln, or what's his name, Egerton Ryerson, or any of these other supposedly racist people, in their context, they were not. All slave owners weren't racists. They were just people in a culture that all seemed to think that this was okay. Doesn't make them all bad people. It makes them misguided. It makes horrible things happen. But it doesn't make the individuals bad people. We shape that. And what is being done today is just reinforcing the biases rather than accepting that there are going to be biases, accepting that not everybody can be everything they want or be everywhere they want, that there are boundaries. We all have them. We all need them. And with that, I'm going to go try and patch together 40 minutes worth of chatter and hope that I gave you some coherent food for thought today. Thanks for listening. Narrative bullshit. It's propaganda.